What's up guys, and welcome back to the YouTube channel. Today we are going to be swapping out a CV axle boot. It's on a 2006 Subaru STI. Technically it should be all the same for a lot of CV axle boots, not even just Subaru, just CV axles in general. So if your CV axle boot is torn and it's not clicking or clunking at all, and you just want to get rid of that grease flinging around everywhere, follow this tutorial and I will guide you along on how to swap out that CV axle boot. Save you a lot of time, not a lot of time, mainly a lot of money, doing it yourself instead of swapping out a whole CV axle. Now the very first thing we are going to want to do, guys, get the car up on some ramps like I have here, and then get the car jacked up in the air. If your car is not slammed like this one is, you can probably just jack it up in the air without putting it on the ramps. The best place to jack up a Subaru is right on that cross member right there that you see the jack on. And I'm just throwing the jack stands on the frame rails. Now guys, if you do not have a strong impact, a 1/2 inch impact, you need to loosen up the lug nuts when the car's on the ground. But I am using an impact just to rattle these lug nuts off. So make sure, if you do not have one, loosen up these lugs on the ground with a breaker bar before you jack it up. The next step is to remove the CV axle nut. Once again guys, if you do not have a beefy 1/2 inch impact, get a DeWalt, by the way. The XFE 20 volt series is amazing. But if you do not have an impact, you're gonna have to pop your center cap off your wheel and loosen this up also while the car is on the ground. But this nut here, I use a 1 1/4 inch socket for. I'm sure there's a millimeter that converts over to that, but that's what I got and it fits perfect, so I'll rattle that off. The next step is now to, yes sir.
Yo, what are you doing?
Just been working in the shop, record some tutorials on this today.
God damn.
Now that we got that out of the way, we can disconnect the lower strut mount from the hub. So there's a bolt here, and I don't know if I can show you guys, there's a bolt right below it too. Both 19mm nuts from the factory. This one has a camber bolt on it on the top, so this will be an 18mm on mine. Yours, if it's stock, will be a 19mm nut. And before you unbolt the strut from the lower mount or the hub, you want to grab a pen and mark the top bolt. It's a camber bolt, so mark the top bolt, just a line through it. So if you don't want to realign your car, you can just set it back to the camber it was at before we disassembled it. Now that we got those bolts out, we can simply just push the strut off of the hub, like so. And now to get the CV axle out of the hub, we're just gonna simply press down on the hub enough to slide that CV axle out. Now that we got the wheel side of the axle out, we're gonna need to pull the tranny side. This is the 06, so it's the male style axle, which just pops out of the tranny. Excuse me. Now if it's the older style, there will be a roll pin that goes through the axle. So you're gonna need to press that roll pin out with a hammer and a punch. Now for this style, we just use a flathead screwdriver and pry on the axle and it'll pop out. There's a little circlip on the axle that expands into a groove inside the tranny. So we simply just need to get that circlip popped out. This is what it will look like when the circlip is popped out. You can simply just pull out the CV axle from there, like so. As you guys can see, this axle was leaking pretty bad. It flung grease everywhere, so I'm gonna grab some brake cleaner and clean all of that grease up. And also on the back side of the wheel. That little tear right there caused all of that grease all over the back side of my wheel, the caliper, the hub, my air strut for the air ride. That all from that little tear right there. Now the next step, guys, is to pop off these clamps or the rings on the axle. You can either just use a flathead screwdriver, pry them up, or you can use a set of dikes, wire dikes, and just snip them off. I prefer just to use a flathead, pry them up. Now that we got the clamps off, we can slide this boot back. Now typically a Subaru axle, you'll pull this end off and there'll be a circlip in there. You just pop out that circlip, you press it, take it off, and the hub side will slide out. Now on this aftermarket axle, guys, I'm actually having to pull this end off. This is another good reason why you just stick with OEM stuff. I have to pull this end off, and there's no clips or anything, that this side just slides off like that. I'll go ahead and pull these ball bearings off that are encased in grease. There's 3 of them. Then I'll slide this boot off, that axle, slide that boot off, slide the new boot on for that side, and I can reuse this boot and have to do all new clamps. But like I said, if it's just the OEM axle, guys, you're gonna just pull that circlip out and that end will slide off. You'll pull the ball bearings off and slide the new boot on and move on from there. So we're going to be reusing this inner boot. Boot is fine. So I can just slap that back on with new clamps on it. We are now ready to install the new CV axle boot onto the axle. So I'm going to go ahead, slide it over the axle like that, and get it close to put on. Before we get the axle actually on, we're going to have to fill it with grease. So the kit, they send you a grease bag. You can use about half of the grease because we're gonna need grease for the other side also. Go ahead, cut that open, and simply just squirt grease right into the axle boot. Like I said, you can throw about half of it in there. Now we can simply slide it on the axle, just like so. We can get this inside in place. There's a little groove where the boot sits. We can now grab our new clamps for the axle. There's an inner and an outer clamp. We're going to install the outer first. Just spread the clamp apart. Set it on the boot like so. And get it as tight as you can. As soon as you get that clamp on as tight as you can with your fingers, you're gonna now take our CV boot clamp crimpers or pliers, and you simply just open them up. The center part presses down, and you crimp them together, or crimp the clamp together. Make sure it doesn't slide around at all. We're good to go. Now you're ready to do the inner boot. Now the reassembly process of the transmission side of the axle is opposite of taking it apart, obviously. We're gonna slide the new boot on, then we're just gonna slide the hub on, put the circlip on with the 3 bearings, the ball bearings, and then this hub, this half shaft right here just slides right on. We're now gonna take new clamps, same concept as the outer, and get the clamps on and crimp them. We will then be ready to install the axle back onto the car. Alright guys, axle is ready to go back on the car. All of the boots are back on, new clamps are on. Hopefully it doesn't tear again. Now to get it back on the car, it's simply just the reverse of what we just did. We're gonna get into the training side first. Once again, we have to compress that circlip on the transmission side. And when you're putting it back in, you don't really need to use any tools, you just slide it in. And you'll know when it clips in, it'll clip in pretty hard. And then we're gonna pull the hub down and get the wheel side of the axle installed. And then we're gonna get the nut back on and connect the hub back onto the strut. We now have the axle back on the car. The very last step is to torque the CV axle nut. It goes to 130 foot-pounds. So the best way to do this, guys, pull your center cap off your wheel, put your wheel on the car, and then lower the car down onto the ground. And grab your torque wrench and torque that. As soon as you get that torqued, you will have, there's that little washer, or the part right here you're gonna bend into the nut. It's just a little security tab, I guess you would call it, to make sure that nut does not come off, because if that came off, that'd be very catastrophic. Now that is gonna wrap up the CV axle install. I know it's a little weird with the whole aftermarket versus OEM thing, where OEM we just had to pull off the one side. This aftermarket one, we had to pull off both sides of the axle to get the new boot on the outer side. So I hope I kind of explained that well enough for you guys. If I didn't, just leave a comment down below and I'll try to answer any questions you guys have. If you have any other questions regarding anything, guys, leave a comment down below. I'll either make a video regarding it or just reply back to your comment. Also, feel free to just shoot me a DM or whatever on YouTube or Instagram. If you thought this video was helpful, please give it a thumbs up. Hit that subscribe button down below. Now, thank you for watching, and I will catch you guys in the next video.